Hi there, this is Zara Imtiaz. Welcome to Asian Agribiz podcast, bringing you interviews and updates from the animal protein community throughout Asia from a trusted and dedicated provider of news, information, and market intelligence. Today, our Malaysian correspondent Rajeshwari Ramani speaks to Diana Sabrain, founder of OneAgrix, a B2B e-commerce marketplace for agricultural and halal food. In a time where COVID-19 and food safety integrity are continuously challenged by stagnant data or unaccountable industry figures, blockchain technology, with its immutable data from farm to fork, could save companies and consumers millions in terms of wastage due to contamination, lawsuits, and medical bills.
Hi, Diana. Thank you for being here today to tell us about blockchain technology.
Hi, Rush. Thank you for the opportunity, and it's my pleasure. And I hope that I would be able, on behalf of OneAgrix, I would be able to shine some light on food trust and transparency.
Great. My first question is, how can blockchain technology help alleviate traceability issues in the animal protein sector, and how can it be implemented?
Yes, that is a really great question, and we get this a lot from industries, the different industry stakeholders. Now, before I elaborate more on the role of blockchain technology in traceability in animal protein sector, I would like to say that when it comes to traceability, when it comes to food traceability, we are pretty much talking about trust and transparency here. And I just want the listeners to understand that blockchain technology is not the end all and be all. It's not the only solution. It is part of the solution to help alleviate traceability issues. If we look at the definition of blockchain that we are talking about here, it is an immutable digital ledger, um, a secured and reliable way to store data. So technologically, 99% chance of these data that are being stored in the blockchain will not be able to be tampered with. At the same time, because of its low failure rate, no one would go through all the trouble to hack when it's just data and it's not assets like cryptocurrency, for example. So over here, if you talk about technicalities a little, we're talking about DLT blockchain technology. So what it does, it helps alleviate traceability issues because there is no point of having farm to fork traceability if data can be can be tampered with. There's a term called garbage in and garbage out. So this is where, as I've mentioned, is part of the solution. However, it is not the entire solution to alleviate traceability issues in the animal protein sector. Later in the interview, we will discuss more about what tools and technology are needed in the ecosystem to alleviate an end-to-end traceability solution.
Sounds really interesting. So, what kind of investment is needed, and does it need to be implemented in stages?
Yes, so when you talk about investment and implementation and the need for technology, with the recent halal meat scandal in Malaysia, we do see that there is a need for implementation immediately. But at the same time, stakeholders, suppliers, manufacturers, buyers, all the way to the consumers are asking, right, for the suppliers' point of view would be investment. How much would this technology cost us? And then there's questions from the ground. Okay, consumers they are asking who would pay the traceability technologies that are being implemented in the food supply chain. So for us at OneAgrix, when we look at all this scenario, we do have a good answer for this. It has to be implemented in stages at the most basic level, at least at the certificate level, at the data level, where you must make sure that the certificates, let's say the ISO certificates, the global gap certificates, if you're talking about halal products here, the halal certificates are not being tampered with. As you know, for the recent meat scandal, they talk about the tampering of halal certs, if you can recall. So this is where we talk about stages. Let it be at the most basic level first, which is the data certificate, which is what we call data provenance. In later stages, we can also implement scientific provenance, where we talk about traceability, traceability measures that are used from DNA level all the way to market surveillance, where you do random checks at customs, at supermarkets. We are also talking about IoT technology, which all of this data in all this technology, this data would be up on the blockchain. So you see the connection here, why we say that blockchain is not the buy all and the end all solution. It has to be an inclusive approach when it comes to end to end farm to fork traceability. Ultimately, it depends also on the budget of the producer. The more in-depth the traceability is, the better brand positioning your company has, because you can show with evidence of every step of your production process when you upload all those data on the blockchain. So let me give you an example. How it can be implemented in stages is, for example, a company can start by piloting or by making sure one product SKU is traceable, test it out and see how it is welcome by consumers. So, but for producers who can afford it, at the same time, they gain first mover advantage. So we highly recommend tracing all your products as soon as possible. We already see FDA, we are already seeing EU talking about traceability being a regulatory requirement. So with the scandal, it just makes things much quicker. It accelerates digitalization. We call this digitalization, right? This is where, you know, of all the sectors, food is after all one of the more stringent ones. We are talking about safety of end consumers. We are talking about we're talking about lives here. So that's the reason why, irregardless of whether the end consumers would have to bolster the cost, it is irrelevant, because we are talking about food safety here, we are talking about lives here. And I think, you know, the investment that is needed for food producers, for manufacturing companies, is actually you know, it outweighs the urgent need for traceability.
What are some of the equipment and technology used in the blockchain, and where is the data stored?
Oh yes, so this is I think with what I've answered a little on your previous question, where, you know, this is where IoT, QR code, RFID, PDA with GPS, thermal printers, 2D, 1D scanners, text labels, sensors. So these are the equipment and the type of technology that needs that need to be implemented in a supply chain before we even talk about blockchain. So all this these are all the data points, right? So all this technology with its data would be uploaded to the blockchain, which is decentralized, and hence there's no central place for it to be stored. That's why it is stored in system all across the network. And when we say systems, we call them nodes. So each of these nodes has one copy of the blockchain. In other words, the transactions that are being done on the network. And when I say transaction, it can mean recording of data, for example, uploading or downloading of data. So again, it's not a one size fits all solution. As I've mentioned in the previous question, you talk about what's the basic implementation. We can say that those companies who are already having their own printers, their own tax labels, their own IoT sensor tech integrated in their manufacturing plant, they can already upload this data onto the blockchain to encourage traceability to the B2B buyers. So it's really based on a case by case basis, depending on production processes, types of products, equipment that are already available.
Want to stay up to date on the latest developments in the animal protein community? Sign up for a free 3-month membership at asian-agribiz.com for daily news, insights on the feed, meat, poultry, and pork industries, and a library of technical and feature articles.
So does that mean that companies which already uses like RFID and scanners and a barcode system, it'll be easier for them to include blockchain in the process as well for traceability issues?
Yes, exactly. That's the thing that we're advocating right now. Because if you look at the food supply chain, there are already companies that already have all this technology that you have mentioned. And what they need to do now is to firstly make sure that those documentations are tamper free, store them on the blockchain, and depending on the permission that they would give, would allow the buyers to actually view selective data. For example, I can give you an example. This is where OneAgrix pioneered this use case where in an B2B e-commerce environment, we pioneered this last year. So what we show is at the add to cart portion, a B2B buyer is able to click check certificate on a halal certification body to see whether that halal certificate of that supplier is legit or not. And for OneAgrix, we have a vetting system at the back end where we will liaise with the certification body to, before we put it up on the blockchain, to verify, okay, so is this supplier giving an honest and real genuine certificate? Yes, they check the box, we save that document, that certificate on the blockchain and add to cart, of course with permission with the supplier and the halal certification body. We allow the buyers to actually look and check and view that actual certificate itself. So what we are creating in an e-commerce environment is to make sure that the future of purchasing is built on trust and transparency. So this is how the cohesiveness of the different technologies that play a part before anything goes up on the blockchain.
Okay. So how is transparency integrity maintained, and why is it important?
Yes, so through a collaborative blockchain network set up between manufacturers and distributors, information such as traceability details about product origin, quality, the nutritional properties of products, and the presence of any allergens or even questionable substances can be stored securely. The fact that all this data cannot be tampered with helps maintain the integrity of transparency. So of course, we cannot say that 100% bad players cannot circumvent this. Again, technology is a tool. Bad actors will always be around. But through technology, what we are actually doing, we are making it really, really difficult for bad actors to commit crime because there's no profitable return for them in doing so. And that's the beauty of having a perfect marriage between blockchain and IoT and the numerous technologies that we discussed about in the previous question when implemented in the food sector. Now, this is really, really important because everybody eats, correct? And with the advent of QR codes and its usage ever since the COVID-19 pandemic, many people would want to know where their food comes from and, most importantly, the integrity of it. So food fraud has seen an increase as producers try to meet demand due to supply chain disruption that is happening everywhere from lockdowns. So this is where it's really, really important for transparency, integrity to be maintained.
I would like to give a real time point of reference here. In the case of the recent halal meat scandal in Malaysia, how could blockchain technology help in this issue?
That is a very interesting question. Um, Rush, and this question comes out a lot. Ever since the halal meat scandal happened, we do have some requests from stakeholders asking the same questions. The journalists asking the same questions as well. And this is where I would like to reiterate from the beginning, right? People ask, would blockchain would have solved this from, let's say, this was implemented 5 years ago. 5 years ago, the answer is not really. Yes and no. Yes, if let's say that the people managing those data are not bad actors themselves. Yes, if let's say those data are honest, they upload it on the blockchain, and then yes, there is no opportunity for for criminals to actually tamper with those data. So in this sense, when we read about the halal meat scandal, they talk about tampering of the halal certificates. Am I right?
Yep.
So this is where, if let's say the halal certification body and has enforced putting and uploading their certificates that are being issued on the blockchain, yes, then it is really hard for the criminals to actually tamper with the certificate itself at with the halal meat scandal. However, does it solve the integrity of the meat? No, it doesn't, because saving a piece of data on the blockchain protects the data, but you can't blockchain the entire piece of meat onto onto the blockchain, if you get what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
how do we solve this part? This is where DNA traceability comes in. This is where market surveillance and comes in as well, which is something different from what we're speaking right now, because right now we are talking purely about data provenance, basically protecting data so that the transparency issues are being reduced. But to solve it further, and we are talking about integrity of the food itself, we need to include scientific provenance. And this is where we see which at OneAgrix we do have that technology as well. We have with our partnership with our stakeholder, with our strategic partners, we do have DNA traceability where you can test from the DNA of the meat products, and in the supply chain, when we conduct market surveillance, when there is random checks in the supermarket, at customs, we are able to trace back and see, oh, okay, this is really the source of meat, which is from this halal farm, and this is truly what it says. Okay, if I say this meat is halal British beef, it is truly halal British beef because of the DNA traceability that has been the DNA specimen that has been taken from the farm.
Since the meat scandal story broke out, have you experienced a surge in private corporations or governments seeking blockchain solution to strengthen their food safety integrity?
Yes, they have. In fact, we've been really, really overwhelmed by the questions that are being asked. OneAgrix advocated trust and transparency, or in your case, you mentioned traceability measures since 2018. And when we talk about this, even though we're an e-commerce platform, a B2B e-commerce platform, we always talk about more people going online more, but how do they even check the integrity of their food? How do they make sure that what they're buying, we are not in the blind? Right now, if you look at an e-commerce environment, we are all guessing and assuming that the suppliers that we buy from are legit, because it's human nature, right? We buy, we add to cart, we add to cart. We don't question for a moment. We think that, okay, if I'm buying from this reputable online store, everything is real. Whereas OneAgrix, we say that it is not as simple as that. And we've been advocating since then. So 2018 and middle 2019, it was, people understand the e-commerce perspective, but they don't understand visibility. They just think, oh, okay, it's something which is nice to have, but not something must have. Shockingly, towards the end of 2000, um, towards 2020, all the way now, starting of the year, especially with the meat scandal, we have companies and even governments coming to us saying that, can we implement, not only, you as a market access platform, but as implementing the traceability aspect of things as well. And I obviously, I can't divulge who are the governments, but I can say it's three governments that we are working with right now to implement our solution into the ecosystem, to encourage their manufacturing and food industry to implement an end-to-end traceability solution. So from our experience, very live right now that we are doing, yes, in fact, I would like to tell the audience to watch this space, because we have two announcements coming up of one government initiative. The other one is from in the corporate sector, where we are piloting traceability in a bigger scale with food producers. So this would be then something of a norm in the next decade. Reason being, as I've mentioned just now, FDA, EU are already talking about making traceability, especially in food, a mandatory regulatory requirement. So if companies in Singapore and Malaysia right now, or in Asia, they are talking about, okay, to the future, how do we actually be relevant? Even consumers now are expecting traceability and more trust and transparency measures. I would really urge companies to really, invest in the technology. It really, really outweighs the benefit outweighs the cost, truly, because it's not only food recall ease that you're talking about. You're talking, I mean, the ease of food recall. You're talking also about not being entwined in legal issues when there is a semolina outbreak, for example, and you're not able to pinpoint quickly, and and you reduce the risk with traceability. And at the same time, of course, brand positioning. If let's say consumers feel that your brands can be trusted, they will keep going back to you. And there is so many reports out there saying that when it comes to consumers right now, they are willing to pay at least 20% of the cost increase of food, because no one wants to be eating bad food and at worst case get ill and die, right? So this is where I would really like companies to see that this is actually not a nice to have anymore, it is a must have.
Okay, great. Diana, thank you so much for coming today and telling us about like blockchain technology and how it can actually help the animal protein sector. I hope we can speak to you again in the next maybe 1 year and see what has happened in this sector.
Yes, absolutely. It's my pleasure, Rasha. I'll always be here to advocate with regards to food safety and food integrity. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Asian Agribiz podcast. I hope you can share the revealing information you have heard with your colleagues and friends. Be sure to tune in to our next one. You can find our podcasts on iTunes or Spotify, or go to our website www.asian-agribiz.com to listen to them and read the latest industry updates. This is Zara signing off for Asian Agribiz.